As of 2024, supplements are a $64 billion industry in the United States alone, and it's projected to double in 10 years. And we take supplements for everything nowadays. And as a naturopathic doctor, I use them regularly and often myself. But what if your next health breakthrough doesn't come from a supplement? What if it comes from a small circle of people who pray, worship, and eat together? Is it possible that developing relationships can actually improve health? Are the exhortations to fellowship, gathering together, breaking bread together, given to us in the Bible actually helpful for our physical health as well as important for our spiritual health? Turns out it absolutely is. A review of almost 150 studies showed that strong social relationships are associated with 50% higher survival odds.
I'm thrilled you're here with us on the Christian Clinician, where we join faith with evidence-based medicine to revitalize your health and renew your faith. Get ready for real and informative conversations with wellness experts and Christian scholars alike to gain a deeper understanding of our faith, explore our God-given purpose, and discover how the strength of our relationship with God can impact our health here on earth.
Welcome to another episode of The Christian Clinician. I'm your host, Dr. Tanya Paynter, and today we're talking about fellowship and the importance that it holds for us. So in 2023, a U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on the healing effects of social connection and community states that the lack of social connection increases the risk of premature death on par with smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. I was blown away when I read that. Not surprisingly, the Bible emphasizes gathering together 5 times more often than almost any other activity. God made us, so he knows how important it is for us to gather together. It might be even more important than exercise. In the Old Testament, we see approximately 40 to 50 passages directly commanding or narrating God's people assembling, feasting, or worshiping together. There are all kinds of festivals and assemblies that were required by the law as laid out in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. They include things like the Passover, the Feast of Booths, and others where the whole community came together. We see all kinds of examples of Abraham entertaining people, Job's family feasts, all kinds of things talking about how God's people would gather together and socialize. And then we have the New Testament. So Acts 2:42 through 47 is talking about fellowship, meals, prayer, and resulting in growth and glad hearts. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 talks about stirring one another up, not neglecting to meet. So it specifically says, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Galatians 6:2 talks about bearing one another's burdens to fulfill the law of Christ. Matthew 18:20 is Jesus saying, for where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am among them. So we see this theme over and over again. I really like the full Ecclesiastes 4:12, 9 through 12. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. If they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. That is so important. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. I love how God even says right there that if you have 2 people that can withstand him, he's there with us to create that threefold cord. So he's very clear in his call for us to be together so that he can draw in there with us, right? He wants to be a part of that threefold cord. So we know biblically that it's all over the place, that we are supposed to, iron sharpens iron, and we're supposed to be there to bear one another's burdens and to lift each other up. I've been feeling very called to this fellowship piece over the last year and a half of my life. Because all the way up until then, I'd basically kind of been a loner. And I say that, tongue in cheek, because when I was little, we used to move a lot. And so I learned that I could always count on my family being there, but it was too painful to create relationships and then move away, a year or 2 later. And so by the time I got into high school and we ended up here in Spokane, Washington, I had basically decided that, it's just easier to just do my own thing, not really invest in anybody, so then I won't be sad when I leave them, which obviously looking back was a terrible decision, but there it was. And nothing through the rest of my life thus far had changed my mind in the importance of gathering together and really making friends until a few years ago when I started feeling very alone. Even though I had my family, I wanted some social connection. And honestly, it was after COVID happened where everything shut down and I didn't have any normal, regular interactions with other people. And that was convicting to me because I didn't realize how much I valued interacting with others, even if I didn't feel like I had a deep friendship or a deep relationship with them. That seclusion where, I thought it would be great to be at home all the time and just do telemedicine and, work on the computer and then just, get up and go make myself some lunch in my kitchen. But I started to realize that there was something incomplete about that lifestyle, and I'm so glad that God called me out of it because I think that that is such a huge tactic that the enemy is using against us. That either it's more comfortable, it's less painful. Certainly, we get hurt less when we don't interact with others, right? When we don't develop relationships, we can't be hurt by other people when we have no expectations of them. But it's also a very lonely place to be, and that isolation is terrible for our health. So let's look a little bit about what the science says about it. So there was a meta-analysis done about social connection and I'll read the finding here for you. Significant differences were found across the type of social measurement evaluated. The association was strongest for complex measures of social integration. So there's multiple touch points. There's a complex, it's not just that I live with someone, right? So it was lowest for binary indicators of residential status. So basically, people who lived alone versus with others, that was the lowest type of benefit they found. The more involved someone was with different types of communities, right? You got a volunteering community, you have a church community, maybe you go work at the church, you have your work community. The more complex your social interactions were with different groups of people had the strongest benefit to survival, to long-term survival. Another finding said that loneliness and social isolation increased mortality risk, so that increased the risk of death, basically. Um, this particular study showed that it's both objective and subjective isolation. So even if somebody was surrounded by people, but they didn't feel like they had any genuine connection, then that still counted as social isolation because if they didn't feel like they had a connection with other people within that community, then that can still be a social isolation situation. So just because someone shows up to church all the time doesn't necessarily mean they feel like they have a community around them. So that was an encouragement to me to say, hey, let's look at some of the people that come to Bible study or that come to church that maybe are not as like maybe they disappear right away and they haven't really engaged in the community of the church. Maybe that's on me to reach out a little bit and, try to initiate a relationship and try to kind of pull them in. And because, we tend to be very tribal, we tend to be very separated as human beings. And so it goes against our drive to just kind of hunker down with our particular group of people and not want to let new people in. So the idea of that open arms and very welcoming community can be so helpful for other people that are trying to find a way in but don't know how to do it. So then there was another study that talked about the frequent religious service attendance. So this was tied to lower risk for disease and death as well. So this one was interesting. Frequent attendance at religious services was associated with a significantly lower risk of all-cause cardiovascular and cancer mortality among women. Religion and spirituality may be an underappreciated resource that physicians could explore with their patients as appropriate. And time and again, I've been seeing the suggestion that religion and spirituality is an unused, untapped source of healing that should be explored. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that we need to be bringing God into these health conversations with our doctors and really exploring how our faith can boost our physical and mental health. The Department of Human and Health Services has social connection card or connection fact cards that review a few of the studies on isolation. And I'm just going to read a few of these because I found these fascinating. I loved how they set it up. And the link for this along with the links for all the other studies that I'm quoting here are found in the show notes if you're interested in digging a little more yourself. But one of them said living in isolation reduces our chances of survival, and social isolation increases the risk for premature death by 29%. It increases your risk of heart disease by 29% and risk of stroke by 32%. It increases the risk of developing dementia by approximately 50%. It also improves medication compliance. It reduces engagement in health damaging practices like drinking and smoking. And then interestingly, there were also some studies that showed that uh, higher resistance to the common cold and other viruses come with social connection. So we tend to get sick less often. Being more socially connected can improve stress responses and minimizes the negative health effects of stress. People with strong perceptions of community belongingness are 2.5 times more likely to report good or excellent health than people with a low sense of belonging. And this one I found really fascinating as well. Social isolation, or even the perception of isolation. So this is where that, subjective versus objective isolation comes in. So social isolation can increase inflammation in the body to the same degree as not exercising. Like that, to me, that was crazy. So, hey, I mean, if you're not a big fan of exercise, then at least go get connected into your church, right? Because then at least we'll have that much less inflammation that we're dealing with. So that brings up the question, if your labs are fine, but nothing seems to be working and you're just not feeling well, we need to dig further to see what is the root of the symptoms. Could a part of it be a lack of meaningful interactions with other people? Do you find yourself self-isolating and the fact that maybe you don't have other people around you to support you and walk with you, is that contributing to your ill health? Do you make time for friendships or inviting others to share a meal with you? And sometimes this can feel really draining, especially when you're busy or you're tired all the time or you don't feel well. But making time for relationships really doesn't have to be much, at least initially. It can be as simple as asking a friend to your house for a 30-minute tea. It can be stopping by the neighbor's house with a muffin and a smile, asking how you can pray for them that day. And fellowship can be found at church too. And we're going to talk about that more in a couple of weeks. But how can we begin expanding our community, especially when we're busy or we don't feel well, or maybe like me, you're an introvert and you really just don't want to? Well, from a health perspective, we need to change that, right? Those volitional issues of us not wanting to, that's actually us pushing back against God and his creation, his created order, right? He wants us to be in community. So our stubbornness in saying, I don't need anyone else, that's pride and self-reliance that we need to learn to break. So if that is you, and that's where I was for many, many years until he made it very clear that that is not where I should be. And if I wanted to further my relationship with him, I needed to further my relationship with other people. So, if you're really looking on trying to improve your health and incorporating God into this journey, this is going to be a big piece of that, right? Gathering together with other women, with other believers to start expanding your social connection and making that a priority in your life is going to be a very important piece. So, how do we go about doing that? Even changing our heart, like maybe, logically you say, all right, I understand that, but I don't want to. The very first thing to do is just to bring it to God, right? Pray about it. Ask Him to help you change your heart, want to engage. That was where I had to start because I didn't really necessarily want to make friends because, as I said, it was always painful having to leave them. And so it was just easier not having friendships. And so for me, I had to pray to even want to have the desire to build friendships. And that he eventually gave me. He gave me more of a longing for developing friendships. But then I was like, I haven't practiced making friends since I was in the sixth grade. Like, how do I go about doing this? I don't know. So then I would pray that God would help me to grow my community and would just bring just one or two people that I could grow close with and start to open up myself to building a relationship. And I wasn't even looking for it. It wasn't even an intentional thing, but I had three very distinct situations where God brought an individual into my life and it just naturally evolved into a friendship. I didn't even have to work at it. Like totally God took over that and he brought these three people into my life. And then from there, I prayed for a few more because I'm like, all right, this is really cool. I love having people that I can call when I'm feeling down or if I need prayer or if I need help with something, I have a couple of people that I can ask for help. I've never had that before. And so then I would pray that he would bring some more people into my life. And now I have a handful of awesome, amazing people that I have coffee with regularly. So you guys know who you are. And um and they just mean so much to me. And knowing that I have somebody that I can take some of my issues to and, prayer to and all of that. And it's been amazing. So and that all came from me saying, I don't want more friends. Friends take up time, and I just would rather be with my family at home alone. Right. So if I can change, anybody can do it. Um, so moving those small steps forward. So the very first thing, praying about it, right? Asking God to change your heart and then asking him to bring in people. And this took, several years. So this was not necessarily an overnight thing. It took a while for my heart to change, right? I had to keep praying this and reminding myself that I did want this, even though I didn't. But biblically speaking, like this was important in my journey to grow closer to God. And so I kept asking him to change my heart, to change my heart, to change my not wanting to change my heart, right? And so the more you pray about that, he's so faithful in doing that. But you have to ask for it. So starting there and then just setting time aside, maybe once a week for 15 minutes, you ask, introduce yourself to a neighbor that you haven't met before or haven't spoken with. Maybe bringing them a scone or a croissant to break the awkwardness of just randomly showing up at their door, or some other little gift, and just get to know them, right? And then maybe at some point that naturally progresses into an invitation to come over for a cup of tea or a coffee, or maybe you guys find a particular restaurant you both love and you guys can go out to eat for lunch. That will start to develop naturally. Or if you see someone that you know at the grocery store, maybe stopping and talking with them for 15 minutes. It's so easy to say hi and just keep walking by because you've got shopping to finish and you've got errands to run, you've got your day plan and you have things happening, right? But when we're starting to focus in on this and making this a priority in our life, God will provide us these little opportunities to engage in our relationship building skills. And so if we are aware of them and we start to take advantage of them, then we start to grow, right? We start to grow our own ability to connect with others. And again, that might be easy for you, but it also might be really hard, like it was for me. Maybe inviting a friend that you haven't spoken with to coffee over the next week. And it's okay to set a time limit. Like you can say, hey, I've got 30 minutes on Wednesday at 7 a.m. Like, do you want to come get a coffee with me for 15, 20 minutes and we can just kind of catch up? So if the idea of sitting for an hour or two or whatever and talking to somebody is overwhelming, then keep expectations low and say, hey, hey, how about I buy you a cup of coffee and we can talk for 15 minutes? Like if you come meet me here, then I will pay for your coffee and we can talk for a few minutes, right? Whatever feels comfortable. So you just want to start working on growing that time commitment over time. And your time priorities will naturally change as you start doing these small things. You're going to find that you want to start hanging out with other people, even if you are an introvert. Now, of course, it's still important to build in alone time and most importantly, time with God. But we just can't neglect to gather together if we're staying true to God's commands for us as his children. So, a couple other ideas: schedule a prayer walk with a friend. That'd be hitting two birds with one stone, right? You'll be getting exercise and a community. In fact, starting in a week, I'm actually going to be meeting with one of my friends before Bible study, so about 45 minutes before Bible study, and we're going to go for a little walk together before we go sit down and study the Word. So maybe you can gather together a small group of your friends, or maybe not friends, just people from the Bible study, and say, hey, you want to go on a small walk, 30 minutes before Bible study starts? And just start to kind of grow together that way. Maybe go to a midweek service and make a point to stay after to connect with somebody that you haven't talked with before, or forming a text group of a few other people that you can help support each other through the week, pray as needed, just kind of be a resource there. Calling a friend for a 10 or 15-minute prayer call, inviting other moms with kids the same age to the park or a play center if you have youngins. Any of those can be great ways to kind of start building that muscle. Now, don't go all in, all crazy. I did that a couple times and I way overbooked myself and I got exhausted. Like it was way too much too fast because I really wanted to do this, right? And then I kind of got burnt out on the social thing. And so then I had to withdraw for 2 to 3 weeks and just kind of recoup myself. So if you are an introvert and you're coming out of that and you're trying to work on building these connections, it's okay to just make one plan a week. You don't have to go crazy and keep the time limit small. So you know yourself the best. Pick, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever is going to be okay. So you don't come back feeling drained. You should feel energized. You should feel, okay, that wasn't so bad. If you feel drained when you come back, then that's too much. And that's okay. Like you don't have to jump in the deep end. You can slowly wade in. The point is that God wants to see you making that effort, and he'll meet you in that as well. So there's a book called A Man Named Ove by Frederick Backman. I love this book. He's such a good writer. But so Ove is a grumpy, solitary dude. He lost his wife in the mid 50s. He was somebody who was very much a rule follower. So he would police the neighborhood and make sure that people were recycling properly and didn't park illegally and were following the rules. Was super sarcastic, pretty abrasive, like a gruff old man that just was like yelling at everybody. But he had lost his wife a few years earlier, and because he was so alone at the beginning of the book, he's suicidal, right? He doesn't want to be alive anymore because he lost his wife. I think he lost his job as well, so he felt like he had no purpose left in life. So he just wanted to end it, and so he kept trying to kill himself. But he was constantly being interrupted by new neighbors who were reaching out to him as they were moving into the neighborhood, and they were asking, like, hey, could you help us with this thing, or could you watch our dog or whatever. And he very, very reluctantly ended up getting roped into all of these different things. So he was getting really irritated that his attempts to take his life was being interrupted by this family. But through this family builds a bond with this gruff old guy, and he starts to realize that, there are people out there who find him valuable and want to be friends with him, even through everything, right? Even through his gruffness and, um, you know, being so sarcastic. And so it's it's really a touching story of seeing how even us reaching out to other people who are socially isolated can make such a big difference. And at the end, like he basically adopted this family and he was with them all the time, and he had a new purpose in life, right? He felt wanted and valuable, and he no longer wanted to take his life. He's like, yeah, I've got stuff to do still here. So that just goes to show how important social connection is, not only for us, but in what we give other people as well. So if you have a hard time saying, well, I don't want to because I don't need that or that's draining to me, then let's flip it, right? We need to think about how is our social connection for another person valuable to them. And that might be a better driver for you if you're like, I like my life the way it is. How can you influence somebody else's life? How can you influence somebody else's walk? And I think that's a really important consideration because it's not just about me. It's not just about I and how I'm going to benefit from it. It's God made us to commune together, and how can my unique individuality affect somebody else's life in a positive way? So, hopefully, this episode has planted a seed for you to consider, not dismissing this out of hand and the importance that this is. Even if you think that this doesn't really apply to you, just sit with it for a few minutes, maybe pray on it. Maybe you have an amazing connection and community, and that's fantastic. So if you do, and you have like a deep circle of friends, then maybe think about one or two people that you can reach out to include into that community that might find it difficult to connect with others, as I did, as I do. It's a struggle for me to small talk and kind of get to know somebody in that way. If you know me, like I like to dive in deeply into theological debates and discussion and or health stuff. You can talk to me about health stuff anytime, but if we're just talking about, shooting the breeze or talking about kids, like I have a hard time carrying those conversations. So sometimes people that seem standoffish are really just they don't know how to engage socially in ways that are commonly accepted by other people. So maybe think about how can I incorporate them into a conversation if I see them like feeling left out or alone or packing up their things and no one's talking to them. Being on that side of the table, that can be really hard. And you want to reach out, but you don't know how to engage. So if you're one of those luckies that have a huge community, a really good, solid community, how can you reach out to other people and pull them in. And even if you're not developing that relationship with them directly, can you connect them with somebody else that would be a good fit and a good friendship? And then, there you go. You've just connected two people, and you've done some of the Lord's work there. So our unity in Christ makes fellowship more than just a social time, right? It's a participation in the life of God's family, which scripture says strengthens our endurance. And that's something that we badly need, especially in the world as it's getting so crazy. And we're called to serve others, to gather with others, to break bread with others. And we can't do any of that in isolation. So we can't obey God's call on our life if we don't interact with others. It's not just about socialization, it's about following biblical guidelines. And there's direct purpose in it, and it's healing, both for us personally and for those we fellowship with. And this healing, it comes as a direct result of Jesus' sacrificial love to us. So in John 17, he prays for his followers to be one, just as he and the Father are one. And that unity only becomes possible because of what Jesus did for us on the cross. And because of his sacrifice, we're no longer strangers, but we're brothers and sisters in God's household, Ephesians 2:19. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. But we can't be a family if we're not interacting with each other. Remember how Jesus lived his life in close community with 12 dedicated friends who would die for him and he for them. And that's exactly what happened, right? Jesus gave his life so that we wouldn't be separated from God, but could live with him in eternity. And without that sacrifice, without Jesus's atoning death, we'd remain separated from God, and the enemy's plan to keep us in isolation from one another would still hold us in its power. Isolation denies the very purpose of the cross, which was to unite us with God, and as a result, to form a family. And our Father wants his family to gather and worship him and to help each other. And what's truly amazing to me is that God made us to interact with others and reap health benefits from that. And that's, as I mentioned, something that I've been called to over the past year, realizing how important fellowship is and the importance it holds for us physically. And so that's why I'm so excited to announce the formation of the Christian Women Health Fellowship. So this is something that God's put on my heart over the last year, and it combines naturopathic healthcare, biblical health coaching, and fellowship together for a truly comprehensive body, mind, spirit, whole person community where we all have our health issues that we're dealing with, right? We all have things that we struggle with, and we often will struggle with them in isolation because society has done a great job of compartmentalizing our healthcare, right? We're not seen as a whole person, we're seen as individual systems. That's problematic because our bodies were made to work together. And in the same way, we've been isolated from each other through rules like HIPAA and, the standard one-on-one care that between a doctor and a patient. And it's become taboo to really talk about health things unless you have a close circle of friends. And I think this has been a very insidious way that the enemy has kind of come in and tried to continue that separation, right? We have social isolation because of social media, and we have social isolation from our medical cares. And we no longer have gathering places unless it's a bar, right? Or some sort of a club. And so as we become more and more isolated, we're becoming less and less healthy. And so I want to take the idea of our HIPAA one-on-one only healthcare and take that back. I want to take that back from the enemy and say no more. Yes, we can still have one-on-one, right? There's some things that need to stay private between a doctor and a patient. But there is a huge healing piece that we're missing when we continue to struggle in our symptoms and in our ill health, when we can't gather together and help support each other through it. And I've experienced this firsthand for the last 5 years. I've been working online in a health coaching group for my chronic migraineurs. And these women, I started out with doing kind of the typical one-on-one health coaching. And because of COVID laws and things that have changed over the years, I am no longer able to do the one-on-one outside of Washington State. And so I had to change it into a more health coaching approach and group only. And so as we did that, there was a lot of reluctance, and I don't think I want to do that. And I encouraged them to say, hey, let's do this for a month. And if you guys hate it, then we'll all part ways and no hard feelings. And to this day, every single one of them stayed. And they actually have told me that it is they get so much more value out of it than what they pay into it every month. They said, this is amazing. They love it. And I've seen the value of it, especially because now I'm not just the doctor. It's not just me. It's also they're caring for each other. And things that I said to one person a year ago, they bring up and say, hey, you told me this about this thing. Do you think that would work for her? That's right. I forgot about that. Yes, that would be amazing. And so they're starting to give suggestions to each other. And we all have bad days, so they have a place to be able to come and vent when they need to just get some things off their chest. And to have that in a Christian community where you can pray for the person, you can lift them up in prayer, and then we can also just be there as a sounding board and to commiserate when that's appropriate. And we can also be there to uplift. And it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. And so the Christian Women Health Fellowship is the same idea, especially because you can't find something like this out there. I haven't seen anything that's remotely similar. And so if you're interested in becoming a part of this fellowship, a part of this group, I would love for you to email me at support@psalmmedical.com. You can find that in the show notes, or you can go to psalmmedical.com. I would very much encourage you to explore that option. Even if you're happy with your current healthcare, that's amazing. You can just join the fellowship itself if you just want to do that. And for the first 10 members that sign up, I am actually offering it at 50% off because you're an initial member and you can help kind of create this and shape what this fellowship looks like. So I'm really excited for this program. We're going to be talking about naturopathic healthcare for things like anxiety and hormone imbalance and perimenopause and fatigue and brain fog and autoimmune disease and gut health, all of the things. But also, and maybe more importantly, we're going to get to talk about God and our relationship with Jesus and how answering our apologetic questions and trying to understand why we believe what we believe and having a safe place to be able to discuss our doubts and our questions and things that we don't quite get. It's going to be amazing. And so I would invite you to come join us. And we would love to have you as a part of the fellowship. You can find the links and all the information in the show notes. And we're going to continue to look at how biblical practices will positively affect our life, address the questions that are affecting our relationship with God and, as a result, our health, and continue to encourage the conversation around bringing God into healthcare as we learn how to overcome conventional clinic taboos. So let's end this episode with a verse from Scripture, Romans 1:12. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine. I hope you have a blessed week. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe for more topics like this, where we focus on bringing our faith and health together for a whole you. If you have questions around your health or your faith, including doubts and struggles with what you've been taught about God, we'd love to have you send us an email at support@psalmmedical.com.